And we're live. Hey, what's up, folks? Stu Myrick, Justin Simmons. Sports Guys Talking Wrestling on the horn for a Tuesday after a wrestling weekend. Did something happen this weekend?
Nothing big.
I heard that somebody may have debuted or somebody came back.
Well, there was a return.
Was there a match? I don't know.
There was just, it was a pretty low-key weekend, honestly. Wrestling-wise, right? Man, see, we sold it perfectly.
Oh, if we could only do it with a straight face.
But that's why we're one of the best.
As Samoa Joe, the new NXT champion, the first ever three-time NXT champion, addresses the crowd on this taped episode of NXT. Because as we have learned, I think we mentioned it last week, that the next 3 weeks of NXT will be taped on USA Network. And apparently that is because it has nothing to do with the company's lack of faith in NXT or USA Network's lack of faith in NXT or anything like that. Nothing silly like that. They're going to renovate the CWC. They're going to renovate the Capitol Wrestling Center.
Which is going to be interesting.
So they're going to make it look different. I've heard a couple things about they'll make it look brighter. Because remember, this was done originally to be NXT's version of the Thunderdome. Then when crowds could start coming back, they started bringing crowds back. So they've tried to make it work. They don't have the deal with Full Sail University anymore.
Ah, that's right.
So
forgot about that.
So yeah, so we're getting a revamped. I guess they're still going to call it the Capitol Wrestling Center. I hope so. I kind of like that.
I like the name.
That's it's a throwback to the days of Vince Sr. and even go back to I guess Jess McMahon. So that's kind of cool. Who's he calling out? He's calling out. Oh, Pete Dunne. Okay.
So he'll be next in line for a title shot?
That's my guess. So we are expected to be joined on the phone by Justin Brasso from Sports Illustrated, our good friend, who I know he was at SummerSlam. I don't know if he was at AEW Rampage in Chicago or not. I don't know if he was at NXT Takeover. I doubt it. But he has covered everything, obviously, so we want to get his take on a lot of this stuff. So,
well, I will say, no matter where he was, he got to see something good.
Oh,
regardless of where he went to, you could have gone to any show and you would have saw something amazing.
And we'll talk about this, but I mentioned a couple weeks ago how for all of WWE's lacking when it comes to building to the pay-per-views, and it's mostly on the Raw side. Mm-hmm. When they get to the pay-per-view, they actually pull it off, and they pull it off quite well. Now, there are a few things that make you go, what? And there certainly was a few things for SummerSlam that made you go, what? And we'll talk about it, but for the most part, it was a fine show. It was a good show. A lot of surprises, some things that, if you believe the rumor innuendo, may have the trigger was pulled a whole lot earlier than you may think. As L.A. Knight,
put him in the world title picture.
The former $1 Million champion decides to come down. I can't remember if he and Joe. I'm not even sure they were in TNA. Impact. Yeah, TNA Impact together. I think they may have missed each other. Knight was coming in when Joe was out. A Knight.
The crowd responds, man.
Hey, look, this guy, he's gold. I have been a big fan of his going all the way back to Impact. So
He's so good.
he is. He's very good. Talking about he's, want to be your first challenger, which means I'll be your last challenger because I'll take the title. Okay. So it's an interesting picture here. So far, we've got Samoa Joe, Pete Dunne, and LA Knight. Let's see. Okay, who's next? And this is your textbook WWE trope.
Oh, you know who it is, man.
Champ Kyle O'Reilly. All right, so Kyle O'Reilly. So so maybe we'll get Kyle O'Reilly.
Man, talk about a match. Him and Adam Cole. That was a battle.
That was a battle. Walter and Ilya Dragunov.
Oh man, who would have thought?
Good God.
I mean, you knew it was going to be physical.
Oh my God, that
physical?
I mean, his chest,
his face.
The face. He had the stitches from I guess a week or two prior. They wrapped that bandage off, but then all the chops on the chest.
Mm-hmm.
Oh dear Lord!
Just welted.
I mean, good Lord! I bet you that boy's chest is going to be red for the next 3 weeks. It was that was crazy, and in the end, Dragunov ends the two. We were trying to figure out how long. 2+ years. I think 870 days. I think that's what they said.
Something like that.
I think 870 days. Now, of course. Let's not forget. Oh, who's that? Is that Ridge? That's Ridge. Ridge Holland. But anyway, so now let's not forget. A lot of that was.
Everybody's vying for the title tonight. Is that how it's
well? No,
work?
this comes from the opening match because Holland and Dunn and then Danny Burch came back and Oney Lorcan attacked Timothy Thatcher and Ciampa. So that was kind of but anyway, a lot of Walter's title reign was pandemic, which means he couldn't do anything because nobody could cross, and NXT UK was shut down for a good 6 months at least. 6-8 months anyway. So anyway, but yeah, we now have the era of the Tsar, as he liked to call himself. Instead of the Ring General, he is now the Tsar. He is a Russian after all. I'd love to meet him just for the sake of maybe having a chance to brush up on my Russian. I still couldn't keep up with him, but.
Oh, did he give him his own belt?
He gave him back the belt. That damn Ted DiBiase gave him a replica belt. That's funny.
That's why I was assuming it was going to happen.
That damn Rat Pack, I swear. All right, so anyway, so what we are going to do is we're going to go in reverse order. We're going to tape the last segment of the radio show first, as we wait, because post call Justin around 8:30, so 8:30 Central. So we're going to do the third segment, get that out of the way, and then we will. So once we finish the third segment, don't go anywhere because we're not done. You'll hear the outro like we always do for the show, but don't go anywhere. So here we go. I got it. Hello Bernsey, by the way. He is our Real good one. So, anyway, I got to mooch you because can't get in trouble with the copyright police, but here we go. Sports Guys Talking Wrestling on the Horn. Stu Myrick, Justin Smash Simmons. As we've said, it's going to be interesting to see what happens over the next few weeks, months, maybe even a year with both WWE and NXT and AEW for that matter.
But great job all around, though.
That's right. Hell of a weekend. We got a good weekend coming up as far as independent wrestling around the area, and we're going to let you know about that weekend. It starts with our friends at SW Fury. They have live TV Saturday at the Irving Convention Center in Irving. Bell time 6 p.m. They've got a meet and greet that afternoon. Shane Taylor will be there. Jacob Fatu, the MLW World Heavyweight Champion, will be there. Jax Dane, our dear friend, will be there. Charlie Haas, Rodney Mack, and more. That's SW Fury this Saturday in Irving. And then Lucha Brutal comes back with Hold My Beer Saturday at Lola's Trailer Park in Fort Worth. Bell time 8 p.m. Jordan Reed from MLW will be there. Fly Def, Prince Adam, Burt Vixen, and more. That's Lucha Brutal this Saturday in Fort Worth. And that's a look at independent wrestling around the area. If you get a chance, go out and support independent wrestling wherever you are. New Texas Pro Wrestling had a couple of events scheduled for this weekend in Houston. However, Kiefer Bartek, the head of New Texas Pro, announced via Facebook that he has COVID-19, so they have to postpone those events. We wish the best to the sheriff, Kiefer Bartek, and everybody at New Texas Pro. Hopefully they can come back soon and stronger than ever. They've been doing a hell of a job with independent wrestling. A lot of the cards they've been having has been
pretty stacked.
Yeah, they're on independent wrestling TV, and they're just they brought in Mike Bennett from Ring of Honor. And they've been bringing a lot of stars. So, Major League Wrestling, we mentioned Major League Wrestling. We had talked about War Chamber coming to North Richmond Hills September 11th. Well, they have announced that due to the Delta variant case counts and all that good stuff, they are postponing that event to March of 2022, and it will be moved to Gilley's in Dallas. If you recall, Gilley's in Dallas, that's where Ring of Honor ran quite a bit. Mm-hmm. Impact Wrestling ran there as well. It's a great spot, that ballroom they have. It looks big without being big. It's not it's a ballroom, so it fits a lot of people, but it looks bigger than on TV. So that'll be a lot of fun. Plus, you're right there in Dallas. You're minutes from the site of the former world famous Sportatorium. So that will be special. So MLW coming to Gilley's in Dallas in March. And then before we go, we got to let you know about the NWA. They've got not one, but two pay-per-views coming up this weekend. Both those pay-per-views can be seen on Fight TV. We'll start Saturday with NWA Empower. This is their all-women's event. This will be at let me get it right, Corazon Ballroom at the Chase Park Plaza Hotel in St. Louis. Bell time 7 p.m. Central. The main event is the inaugural NWA Women's Invitational Cup. It is a 10-woman gauntlet. The winner will challenge the NWA Women's World Champion the following night at NWA 73. The announced participants: Lady Frost, Tootie Lynn, Chelsea Green, Jamie Senegal, Debbie Malenko, Bianca Carelli, Genocide, Thunder Kitty, Masa Slamovich, and Kiara Hogan. You also have the women's world title being defended at Empower. Camille defending against AEW's Layla Hirsch.
Oh, nice.
So that'll be an interesting, with the difference in sizes and such. Mm-hmm. Deanna Praza will defend the Impact Wrestling Knockouts Championship against Melina. They've got a women's tag team title tournament. The Free Babes Miranda Gordy and Hollywood Haley J and Jazzy Yang taking on Kylan King and Red Velvet from AEW. You also have Hell on Wheels, Renee Michelle and Sahara 7 taking on Allison Kay and Marty Bell. And then the winners of each match will go on to vie to become the first NWA Women's World Tag Team Champions. The Battle of the Brands, NWA's Kylie Ray versus Triple A's Chica Tormenta versus AEW's Diamante. Interesting matchup there. And then you also have appearances by Kenzie Page, Sky Blue, Christy James, and others. So that's Saturday. Then Sunday, NWA 73, they are celebrating the 73rd anniversary of the National Wrestling Alliance. And they've been promoting as at the Chase because that's one of the pivotal sites for the NWA from back in the day.
Well, that's what Harley Race used to be.
Exactly.
That was his home territory.
Yeah, it's in St. Louis. Back at the Coruscant Ballroom at the Chase Park Plaza. Bell time 7 p.m. Central. Career versus title. The NWA World Heavyweight Champion Nick Aldis defending the title against Trevor Murdoch. If Trevor Murdoch loses, he is hanging it up.
Wow.
So that'll be a big one. Chris Adonis will defend the National Heavyweight Championship against the Cowboy James Storm. Aaron Stevens and Kratos defend the tag team titles against La Rebellion, Bestia 666, and Mecha Wolf 450. You've got the Women's Invitational Cup Gauntlet winner against whoever comes out as the Women's World Champion from the previous night. They're calling the Brawl in the Lou, Tom Latimer, Crimson, and Tim Storm.
It's going to be just an old school slobber knocker
Oh, my
style,
God. That's, three big guys just beating the snot out of each other. There will be a battle royal. The winner will become the new number one contender to the NWA National Championship. The participants to be TBA. Mickie James will lace him back up, get in the ring with Kylie Ray. Then you have the NWA Television Champion Tyrus, Jordan Clearwater, and the Masked Man taking on the Pope and the End, Otison and Perro. Plus, they made this announcement last week, making an appearance. The man that probably most personifies the 10 pounds of gold. He held that title 10 times. The Nature Boy Ric Flair will be a part of the National Wrestling Alliance event for the first time in long time, many years. Anyway,
that's the 80s, right? Or early 90s.
Yeah,
because
early
they were still
90s,
NWA there.
Yeah. So anyway, that's NWA with 2 pay-per-views this weekend. Go to Fight TV for all the details. Get it from there, and you'll probably see some good history. And that'll do it for this week's Sports Guys Talking Wrestling. You can follow Justin Smash Simmons on Twitter, Instagram, and Twitch at The Smash Simmons. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Stu Myrick. That's STEWMYRICK. You can follow the show on Twitter at SGTWATX, and also that's our Twitch channel. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at Sports Guys Talking Wrestling. We live stream on YouTube Tuesday nights and Twitch. You can also catch us Wednesday nights at 9 p.m. Central on the flagship station for the Texas Longhorns and your radio home in Austin for the Dallas Cowboys, The Horn, 104.9 and 101.9 FM and AM 1260. Or you can catch us anytime on demand by either going to hornfm.com and click on the On Air tab, or by subscribing to us on your favorite podcast provider. For Justin, I'm Stu. Big thanks to Justin Bross for joining us, and thank you so much for giving us part of your time tonight. We will see you at the matches.
Goodbye and good night. Bang!
Perfect. All right, so that's how the end of the show will sound. Let's see, 8:20. Okay, so we got about 10 minutes. We are watching the finals of the NXT Breakout Tournament. Carmelo Hayes and Odyssey Jones. The winner, I guess, gets a contract. Although, as we have seen in the past, they have not been shy about signing more than just the winner. So, Odyssey Jones, the bigger guy. Carmelo Hayes. I've seen Carmelo Hayes before, and I don't know where. I don't know. Anyway.
I mean, I don't watch a whole lot of NXT, so has this tournament been impressive?
It's been pretty good from what I've seen. I haven't seen much of it. I know Trey Baxter was a part of it, the former Blake Christian. They had a couple others. Had a couple guys from the UK in it. So it's been pretty good. You know, this is one of those things you kind of wonder because the last time I heard about the breakout tournament, our good friend ACH.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Was in it.
That's right.
As Jordan Miles, and well, we know how that turned out. So, what's going on? I gotta turn these down.
Yeah,
my things are clipping.
I was like, it's popping. Like,
yeah, it is popping. I don't know. Maybe I'm turned up too much. I don't know. Anyway, so let's see what else is that. Yeah, that's a little bit better. So anyway, yeah, we'll go through everything from the weekend. There was a lot. It was a lot to take in. From CM Punk almost crying on the ramp there at Rampage to Edge coming out to the Brood.
Well, it's okay.
That was sweet.
It's okay to tell him we're basically just holding out until Justin gets
there.
there.
Yeah, we're waiting for Justin Barroso. We'll call him about 8:30 p.m. Central, so about 8 minutes.
Because then you'll just hear us tell you all this stuff again.
Yes.
And then there'll be no pop from you.
Well, we won't go into too much detail. Plus, we'll get Justin's side of it since I assume he was at SummerSlam at least.
Do our streaming viewers have any takes for you?
Let's see. I don't know.
Well, if
let's
you
see.
have
Burnsy
something.
is saying, well, let's see. I think that match hurt me. I think he's talking about Walter and Ilya. I think that hurt everybody. And it got rave reviews. I mean, I didn't see a negative word about it anywhere.
No, it was.
In fact, most people said probably a very strong match of the year contender.
I was gonna say wrestling Twitter is basically like a John Cena crowd. Normally, it goes 50-50.
Okay,
but in this case, it was just all positive.
Okay, yeah, and I'm not basing this. I don't base this on wrestling Twitter. I actually base this on those that cover it, like us. You know, are like the Hausmans and Barrasso and Andrew Zarian and Mike Sempervive and those guys. You know, the guys that are our contemporaries, so to speak.
Wrestling's for the fans.
Yeah, but I like to rely on those that cover it like us. You know, we know what Twitter can do. Yes, Twitter can be very positive, but Twitter can also be very fickle. So, but yeah, it was interesting. It was a very full weekend. So, and we'll talk a little bit about Monday Night Raw, which also had it wasn't a horrible show. Let's put it that way. It was better than most. But then again, that wasn't not a very high hill to climb.
It's I think I found the secret to enjoy Monday Night Raw, and it really just depends on how you watch the show.
Well, I found one secret. Don't have 43 rematches. They only had one.
Oh,
in fact, which was AJ and Riddle, and actually that one I almost don't mind because they can put on a really good match. But you didn't see a rematch last night. I guess you could say Sheamus, Damian Priest with the tag, although at least it involved Bobby Lashley and Drew McIntyre as well. But outside of that, you didn't see the same match you've seen the last 6 weeks. So that I didn't. I was like, okay, that's a step forward. You did see like the beginnings of some new stories, so that was good.
Which is supposed to happen post SummerSlam, so that's nice.
True,
because some of those things felt like they were being saved for Crown Jewel.
It's also supposed to happen after WrestleMania, and we didn't see it.
I think
if anything, we've seen some of those feuds carry on way too long. So,
but I think they also were trying to wait out COVID and see how that was going to play out before really going back to their storylines with crowds.
And we heard that, and we heard that they were saving a lot of things for when they could get crowds back and everything. And this is something I'll have to ask Justin about.
I mean, could you imagine not having CM Punk come back without a crowd to professional wrestling?
We're not talking AEW. We're talking WWE.
No, we're just talking in like professional wrestling in general.
No, I'm talking about WWE. AEW is not included in this. What I'm saying is WWE was saving, allegedly, it's the rumor and innuendo, they were saving a lot of stuff. And it just felt like, okay, where is it? Where is it? It was taking them a little while because they'd been back on the road since, beginning of July. We saw, Finn Balor show up on SmackDown, and that was it. And we saw Karrion Kross get, miserably misused on Raw.
But we've seen Baron Corbin's character development. We've seen Nakamura get over once again and now kind of rising into the title picture possibly.
And that's SmackDown. That's SmackDown, SmackDown's been good. I'll give it that. Raw, on the other hand, has not.
How dare you disrespect Moist TV?
Yeah, I will. And I hope to God that what we saw last night meant that's over.
No.
I really hope so.
No. Don't disrespect Johnny Drip Drip like that.
Well, hey, they're going to have to fight it out. They're fighting it out. So hopefully that's it. And he said so much himself. No more, Drip Drip, Miz TV, Moist TV, whatever. He's ready to fight. So I'm hoping that's a good sign. So we'll see. Let's see. I'm going to do this. Let's go ahead and
I still don't know about that, though.
Do that.
I think they're a really good team.
Oh, I think they are, too.
Your call has been forwarded to an...
Well, there you go.
He's still on the phone, so that's okay. We'll keep vamping. I think, we'll see what happens. They're supposed to... I think they're supposed to face each other next week on Raw. And we saw a lot of stuff. First time in forever, we saw a lot of next week on Raw matches. Mm-hmm. The promos, which I'll be honest was again something we haven't seen on Raw in a while, and it was kind of refreshing.
But I think it has something to do with getting everybody back. Like the major players are now officially back for them, so they can kind of fill out the top. And now they can start kind of slotting everybody in the way that they want. And that's been a big help. The only person that's missing right now is Asuka.
Hold on.
And Sasha Banks, maybe.
Hold on. That could be true on SmackDown. Again, we're talking about Raw. And that's something else we'll have to ask. Raw's got to feel like the redheaded stepchild after SummerSlam. Because all the big stuff happened with SmackDown. Lynch is on SmackDown. Brock's on SmackDown.
Wait. Bobby Lashley just defeated the legend that is Goldberg.
Yeah, but I think most everybody expected that.
Well, it wasn't even
and that's not as big as Brock coming back or Becky coming back.
As it should be. It should not be bigger than
that's what I'm saying.
But the fact is that
they
went all out. They brought back everything they could.
They didn't bring back anything.
Besides the Undertaker.
They didn't bring back anything for Raw.
I mean,
outside of Goldberg.
Yeah, because that's all they had.
And we've seen Goldberg quite a bit. I mean, I don't know what they brought back. They didn't bring back much of anything.
You were all excited about it last week. Now you're not excited about the Goldberg angle with his kid?
If you remember correctly, I picked Lashley.
Yeah.
I was excited because Gage got some airtime and the San Antonio Churchill. What was they called? I looked. I saw the.
Yeah, but now he got physically involved in a match.
I'm not crazy about that.
I was like, that was no fun. That was just kind of
That's not. That's. I'm not crazy about
that. This is totally jumped the shark.
Yeah, I'm not crazy about him doing that.
It's I get that he likes his kid and everything, but it's just all Does your kid want to be a pro wrestler? Is that what this is?
There we go.
Congrats,
dialing.
Carmelo.
Mr. Myrick, how are you, sir?
What's up, Justin? How you doing, man?
I'm well. I'm driving for the next 2 minutes, so if I go in and out, that's why. But I'll be right into my parking space soon.
No worries, no worries. So we're gonna hit record, do our intro. Justin's with me, so Justin, say hi to Justin.
How's it going, Justin?
Hey, nice to hear your voice. How are you?
I'm doing well.
All right, we're gonna do our intro, and then we'll bring you in. Okay?
And I'll be parked. I should be parked, but if I can get a spot, I'll be ready to rock.
Sounds good. All right, here we go.
This is WWE superstar Charlotte Flair, and you're listening to Sports Guys Talking Wrestling. Remember, if you're going to do it with Flair. Woo!
When they're not covering the sports world, they're talking about the world of professional wrestling.
It's Sports Guys Talking Wrestling.
Now, with Justin Simmons, here's Stu Myrick.
It is Sports Guys Talking Wrestling on the Horn. Stu Myrick, Justin the Smash Simmons. What a hell of a weekend, right?
Yeah, I'm an uncle now. Congratulations to my brother.
Congratulations.
And his wife.
I'm a little bit older, and someone that probably didn't get a whole lot of sleep is joining us via the Vaqueros Cafe and Cantina hotline. It is our good friend from Sports Illustrated, Justin Barrasso. Follow him on Twitter at Justin Barrasso. Justin, how was the weekend for you?
Actually, very nice. So I didn't travel this weekend. I actually covered remotely from Casa de Barrasso.
Smart man.
But in Boston, yeah. Hopefully, I'm at the Survivor Series. That'll be in New York, and I think that's probably the next wrestling trip I think I'll be on. Things could change. Maybe New Japan and Philly before this fall. But what a great weekend from Friday night to Saturday to Sunday. Obviously, there were some parts that weren't great, but man, there was so much to enjoy.
It was a lot of. Let's go in chronological order. Let's start with Friday night at the United Center, the home of the Bulls and the Blackhawks. AEW Rampage, and the worst kept secret that might have ever been in pro wrestling finally happened. CM Punk makes his debut. How much did you feel when you saw him walk onto that stage and you could see him getting emotional?
From front to back, I thought it was, I don't want to be hyperbolic here, but from front to back, I thought it was the most special thing I've seen in a long time. And it's always tough, EST thinking. It was the greatest, or it was the best, but it was just so meaningful. If you grew up a wrestling fan in the early 2000s, a fan of CM Punk and his rise, and then in ECW, the WWE version, and then in WWE, and in what he stood for and what he became and the frustrations. And I mean, I think it was a Thanksgiving weekend. I'm jumping around, but it was the Cabana podcast. I think it was a Thanksgiving weekend. And that's all we could, was I writing at that point? I must have been, but in a different capacity. All I could think about was that. I mean, listen to it over and over again, knowing Punk's story, following him in the post WWE run, to have him come out and just, it built organically from the moment the cult of personality hit, from him walking down, jumping into the crowd, getting into the ring. Very much a Punk type thing to do, put over Britt Baker to start his promo, and we were off to the races. I thought it was so special. I thought he touched on just enough WWE, because it shouldn't have been a WWE promo and it wasn't, but you needed to touch on it or else it's disingenuous. I just liked everything about it. I thought it was perfect. And man, wrestling is a better place with CM Punk, and it's a much more exciting place now that he's back involved.
Did you you mentioned he seemed to reference his time in WWE without specifically saying WWE. We've heard that certain individuals in Booker T, who is a good friend of the show, apparently he had a problem with it. You didn't have a problem with him talking about how, August of 2005 was when he left professional wrestling, referencing his time in Ring of Honor?
I think Booker's wonderful. I think he's smart. I think people forget how much Booker meant to pro wrestling. I love hearing his perspective. And it's always fun to hear because Booker will forget more about pro wrestling than so many of us will ever learn. So it's fun to hear a different perspective from a star perspective. So I think the Booker stuff is interesting. If people who are listening haven't listened, I would recommend they do, because I think Booker's as talented as he was, he's equally as smart. My opinion, though, from someone covering it, yeah, I loved it. I thought it was the right blend of, he hit the right notes, I thought. And that's not to say that people out there couldn't have or thought otherwise, but I thought it was extremely well done, and I thought he spoke from the heart. So I thought it was very genuine, and I think that's what we're going to see. We're going to see an authentic version of Punk. It doesn't mean everyone's going to like it, right? That'd be crazy if they did, if we found something that everyone liked. But I do think it's going to be a very Phil Brooks type run. Love it, like it, dislike it, hate it. I think this is going to be, he's going to wear this run on his sleeve. So I'm excited to see what comes next. I thought it was really well done. Front to back, I liked how, they went to the rafters for the call out for Darby Allin. It's still fun, Stu. And we've talked about Sting numerous times. It's crazy how WWE couldn't do more with Steve Borden, and to see Sting up there, and hey, he's playing the greatest hits, but I love the greatest hits, right? I'm not alone. So I thought that was neat to have CM Punk in the same discussion as Sting. I thought it was great. I really did. And to me, it's something that I'll hold on to for a long time. And, I kind of thought it was funny, the whole internet breakout about the gentleman who was crying. This stuff's it's designed to play with your emotions. Like, that's, of course, like, that's wonderful. Like, and it's funny too. I've tried at sporting events, or got choked up at sporting events, and no one thinks otherwise. It's funny how pro wrestling sort of has that. I don't know. You know what I mean? It's sort of like, oh, you're crying about wrestling? Well, damn right I am. Actually, if you don't mind me sharing a story, can I share a story about you real quick that I thought was very endearing? It's actually the night I thought, I hope I'm friends with this guy for life. And I'm talking about you.
Okay.
When Cody Rhodes defeated
Nick Aldis.
He won the NWA title.
Oh, yeah.
And he defeated Nick Aldis. And you came over and said, Justin, I got to compose myself. I've been crying, thinking about what his family meant to wrestling and what it's meant to me. And I thought to myself, this guy's incredible. And we hardly knew each other at that point.
Yeah.
But I thought, wow, like somebody that cares that much. It wasn't because you were getting something out of it or you were going to run this interview. No, it just meant something to you because it was real. I love that. Like, that's how I felt, very much when Daniel Bryan came back at Mania and had that match. It was just special. It was emotional. Taker's farewell, if it's really his farewell, we'll see. But the Taker farewell, I mean, I remember watching the debut with my brother and father. That was 30 years ago. It's not recent, So, I mean, I loved it. I loved everything about it, and it was hard not to get a little emotional.
Yeah, and it was, what's funny is 3 years ago at All In, that night I had just had Dustin Rhodes. At the time, he was still Goldust. He was still under WWE contract. I had Dustin Rhodes sitting right here in the Sports Guys Talking Wrestling studio. He and I did an hour, our first time together, and we'd become really good friends. And then, just a few weeks later, to see his brother reach a pinnacle that meant so much to his family. Yeah, I was, you damn right I was going to be emotional. So I appreciate you bringing that up.
But it's okay. It's okay because, I guess I get the label of the bad guy on this show. But let's get down to the nitty-gritty of the CM Punk return here. So who was that for? Because I know it was a lot of fan service. There was a lot of fan service this weekend. But I also jump on another show on the Horn with the Wagner Wire on Sunday mornings, hosted by Adam Wagner. And I brought this up. I go, he saw CM Punk all over Twitter. He doesn't watch wrestling. Was this a move to also try to attract new wrestling fans? Or was it just like this one time, like, hey, awesome, again, I'm a fan of CM Punk. I really followed his career. I'm glad that he's back. But I kind of just wonder, where does he fit in AEW in the long haul?
Yeah, I think great question. I think it definitely ties into the lapsed fans. If you could bring in new fans or different fans, I think Punk's a crossover star. And I think sometimes too, I don't mean the three of us, but in general, I think every sport wants a mainstream star that crosses into other genres where you can bring in fans that aren't fans of whatever it is and make them fans of your product. So I think, but to me, with Punk, like I think back to when The Rock came back and they had that program together that led to Mania, and The Rock won the belt, and still correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it was the Rumble, and it was the Punk promo that said the boxing with the boxing with God promo, something like it was really well done. And if I remember, the crowd, Dwayne was smart, Dwayne Johnson, to get out of that to get out of that program, because Punk had the crowd behind him. That was a very, that's The Rock. Very rarely do you hear, I mean, I guess the Roman Rumble, but that was more directed at Roman than it was Dwayne. But I think that wrestling fans are going to come out in droves to see CM Punk. Maybe he'll even cross over a little bit too. So I think it's the best of both worlds. Again, whatever AEW is paying him, I think it's worth it.
Yeah, I totally agree. Talk with Justin Barrasso from Sports Illustrated. You and I were both on the media scrum after Rampage, and you asked a great question about the timing. Why now? And the answer he gave, and basically just he felt it was the right time after 7 years. We found that he and Tony Khan had been talking for about a year and a half at least. And it took Tony a year and a half to finally get him to sign on the dotted line. What did you think of the way Punk answered that question, as well as handled himself in with the media that was gathered virtually Friday night after the show?
I love when, obviously, because even if I wasn't a part of it, I would have loved to have read the stories and eventually watched. I think they posted in its entirety. It was so much fun to see like Phil's facial reactions for certain questions. And, I wanted to ask something, in a scrum, everybody's going to get your answer, but you're going to get all theirs too. So I wanted to ask something that had some meaning behind it. And I actually loved asking about the ice cream bars. And I'm going to get off track for a second, but I did an interview recently, Stu, with Kevin Nash. And it was about his newest Mattel wrestling action figure. And if there's a better interview in wrestling than Kevin Nash, I would love to interview that person, because I think he's sensational. He captures the memories so well. He's still very relevant. He just has a great perspective. Anyway, so talking with Kevin, and he's talking about how I asked him a pretty benign question about his wrestling figure. And he said, Justin, I've been champion about 30 days as Diesel, and my mother died. And I remember burying her and then going to a show and working in Winnipeg and going to the next show and going to the next show. Keep in mind, I just asked about a wrestling figure, but how excited are you that Diesel, the era of Diesel still being captured and cared about by wrestling fans and being made by this company. And he went into this very meaningful story with depth about how that was such a tough time in his life. And he brought it around about how it means so much that people still remember, right? It was only a 3-year period, but people still have such fond memories. With Punk, he's great too. And it was interesting how I asked whose idea it was about the ice cream bars, which whoever it was deserves some shine, because that was a brilliant idea. And it was Punk's idea. And I love the fact that he tied it into John Lester's farewell with the Cubs, when Lester signed with the Nationals, and then he had the open bars in Chicago, and you can't think of Punk without thinking of Chicago. If you're a Punk fan, you can't think of Chicago without thinking of Punk. So there was so much realism in it, I guess is what I'm getting at. And that's why I think Punk will transcend into a new era. He's too real not to work. And there's so much history behind him. Timing is interesting. Why is this the right time? He's been saying for years he'd come back. Because at first it was he'd never come back. Then it was, if there was the right story. And I think we're going to see even the Britt Baker line. He has the ability now to put over people, to still make his point in the ring. Phil Brooks has a lot to prove. So I do think I don't know if it's the right time, but it's the right time for us because he's back. And I can't think of, again, this weekend had Samoa Joe win the NXT title. which is wonderful. It had Brock Lesnar come back. It had John Cena back, in a title match against Roman Reigns. Becky Lynch came back, and all those moments were dwarfed by Friday Night Rampage in not the most ideal TV slot at 10 o'clock on a Friday night by CM Punk.
Yeah. And by the way, Punk footed the bill for the ice cream bar. So even better. What a hell of a story. So to bring back something he had mentioned 7, 8, 9 years ago to Vince McMahon and bring it full circle, and the fans there in the United States were the winners as they got the free ice cream bar. So let's switch gears to SummerSlam the following night. Let's start with Brock. First of all, Brock Lesnar with a top knot and a beard. That's a look, man.
I can't pull it off, but good for him.
I couldn't either. So it looks like he is going to be a potential opponent for Roman, which has all sorts of great story, not only with Roman and Brock, the WrestleMania 30 that match, but then you got Paul Heyman, who has got to choose sides and all this stuff. Not to mention, I guess that means Brock is a babyface. Give me your thoughts.
Yeah, at first I thought, wow, how excited, and obviously the roles are reversed, but how excited am I to see another Brock Reigns program. They headlined what? They headlined 31 together. They headlined 34 together. Was it a big SummerSlam match too?
Yeah.
I'm a huge Brock fan, but it's going to be tricky to go from Cena to Brock. And I think it's going to remind us, not that we need a reminder, of how great John Cena is. John came back for, I think he called it his summer vacation on Twitter. John came back for a mini run. A mini run, still a run. Cena came back for a run, and he was so damn invigorating. He infused so much enthusiasm into everything he did. I don't think we're going to see Brock work a house show loop. I just don't. Cena did it, and it was fun. Everything John did was exciting. And then to boot, John takes the suplexes from Lesnar at SummerSlam, which I guarantee you he didn't have to do. He opted to. That's John, right? It's kind of his farewell. It's going to be very interesting. I think Brock, covering MMA, I think Brock is one of the best interviews in MMA. He doesn't talk in wrestling. When he does, it's not always a hit. It's going to be, does he talk? Do they just keep the mic? Maybe he's a silent type assassin. Or maybe he doesn't talk. He just beats people up. I don't know. It's interesting because it's a really fine matchup. It's going to be fun. I don't know how you have Roman come out of it, but you need Roman to come out of it. So there's questions there. It's going to be fun. But meanwhile, it's hard not to compare. AEW fans, if you're an AEW fan, you're making out these lists of soon-to-come dream matches of all shapes and sizes. I don't know. Again, I'm excited that Brock's back. I think you have people like Finn Balor to carry the week to week with Roman because there's still more of that story. That story very much excites me. And it just makes me wonder what happens come Mania. There's a very select few amount of people who can main event a WrestleMania with Roman Reigns. I would have put Brock on that list. If we see it now in Saudi, I don't know if I'll still feel that way. I think you could probably still do Cena again, but I think long term, you've got to be thinking about what's Roman doing at WrestleMania. And I wonder now that Brock's back here, if he'll be back in Dallas for WrestleMania.
I think the popular theory right now is Brock versus Roman at Crown Jewel in Saudi, and because I think they're still hoping for Roman versus The Rock at WrestleMania in Dallas or Arlington. It's in Arlington, not Dallas. But
close enough.
Yeah, it's close enough. I know. But so that's where I'm thinking, okay, and that kind of leads to where you just said about, okay, if that's the case, then yeah, you got to keep the title on Roman, which means Brock gets a rare title loss, in a championship match. Is that okay? I think it is, but what say you?
I do. I think that would probably be an indicator that Brock's not here for a long stretch, if that's the case. But then again, that's Brock, right? Maybe you bring him back for the Rumble. Maybe you bring him back for Mania. Everything I've heard about Dwayne Johnson is no on Dallas, yes on LA. long time to come. Things can change. Everything I've heard is he will not be main eventing the Mania in, Arlington. And I've heard that repeatedly from people inside WWE. Would that change tomorrow if Dwayne said I'm available? I'm sure it would. But as of right now, I'm going with what I was told by multiple people I trust, that he will not be there at this upcoming Mania. If I had to choose right now, Stu, I would still say it's probably Cena. And I think those three, and you could even say those five, because the Usos deserve credit. Paul Heyman deserves immense amount of credit. And then there's Roman and John could make that work. To me, I have a feeling that's going to be the biggest match they can do at next year in WrestleMania 38. I don't know. We'll see. But we've seen this matchup. We haven't seen it in this way. Roman's never been better. What does Brock bring as a babyface? Can he talk? He has no problem putting people over. I mean, he's made guys look like stars. Seth Rollins comes to mind when he sold and lost to him, and the way he made him look like an all-time great. So I wouldn't be worried about that. But again, the program, I think it's smart they have enough people, particularly Finn, to carry the week to week, because that story still has a lot left to be told. I hope we see Nakamura, Roman. There's got to be at least 4 more guys, at least, to get Roman from here to Mania. We know Finn's on that list. I really hope that Nakamura is too. I'm excited. I think that, it's funny, and I'd be curious Justin's opinion, curious yours too. People complain so often about Monday Night Raw, and I get it. Last night I thought was a pretty good episode, but people complain about Raw, the rematches, the lack of creativity. Granted, you have Sasha Banks and Bianca Belair, or you had them on SmackDown, and you have Rome. But if Raw and SmackDown, there's a lot of rematches on SmackDown too. Mm-hmm. Just SmackDown's carried 3 segments by Roman Reigns, and Paul Heyman and the Usos. They're so damn good. It makes up for a lot of lack of creativity in the writing or in rematches, seeing the same matches over and over again. So, and it helps to be an hour less too. But I think that Roman and his crew, or his ensemble, cover a lot of blemishes. They would do the same on Raw if they were on Raw. They're lucky to have them. They are, I think, the best act in wrestling. Roman, Paul, and the Usos. They are incredibly captivating. It'll be very interesting to see how it goes with Brock, though.
Yeah, I agree. What do you think? What do you think, Justin Simmons?
I'm surprised they never actually broke them up. I thought that was like a story direction that they were going to go in first before they kind of just became the most dominant faction in WWE. I'm really surprised it's held together this long, but I'm glad that they stuck with it.
Yeah.
I've been impressed with all the work, and like Justin just said, that they do, basically take up at least
they do
more than probably half of that show.
Yeah. And
there's a good reason why, though. They're a captivating watch.
They are.
And Paul Heyman does a lot of great work.
Let me ask you, talking with Justin Brosman from Sports Illustrated, let's go to the other big return, Becky Lynch. All the rumor innuendo says this wasn't supposed to happen until at least October, maybe even November. But then Sasha Banks becomes unclear, not cleared to wrestle, and we won't speculate as to why. So I suspect they had to pivot pretty quickly. It is a little odd that they decided to keep promoting Sasha versus Bianca when allegedly it was known as of last weekend when they pulled Bianca and Sasha off those house shows that Sasha may not be ready. Be that as it may, she comes back. She does the feigned handshake with Bianca and then basically 2 moves and wins the SmackDown Women's title. I know a lot of people had problems with that. Did you?
I did. It was, and I love SummerSlam 1988. Brutus Beefcake is unavailable. The Honky Tonk Man's celebrating in the ring with his little dance. He's the greatest Intercontinental Champion of all time. He is a heel's heel. He is a villain's villain. The Warriors music hits, and we have a new Intercontinental Champion. I love that story.
Yeah.
It doesn't work. Now, maybe Becky turns into a heel. It just didn't work Becky's, no matter when she's comes back, it's going to be spectacular, and she's beloved. And Becky Lynch has so much equity built. People love Becky Lynch, so of course it's a wonderful moment. And then you have this incredible match against someone you've spent building or given the opportunity to build herself the entire year. So all 8 months, Bianca Belair has been a face of SmackDown. She wins the Royal Rumble. She has great memories or moments with Bayley. She has a history-making main event with Sasha Banks where the match simply delivered. I mean, they were sensational. To have her lose in a squash match like that, babyface. Now, could the story change? I suppose. But the moment is what the moment is. I think it was a bad idea. I would never do, I'm not saying it means less, but I would never do anything to put Bianca Belair, one of my present and future superstars, in a position where the Mania, history-making Mania moment could mean a lot less. That was a massive moment. I didn't like the fact that she lost the way she lost. Had Becky cheated and turned heel, maybe that's different. Had they just wrestled a few minutes, had they done something, it's different to me than Brock taking the title off Kofi, because Brock was a monster. And it's easy when the opponent's a heel. But two baby faces, I don't know. It just to me it's another it's a highlighted example of their short-sighted booking, and I wouldn't blame Becky for that. I think Bianca's been wonderful as champion. She did a lot of it without fans. I thought her match in the Hell in a Cell with Bayley was phenomenal, but again, to me it was very short-sighted.
I tend to agree with you because, if you believe the rumor and innuendo, Becky, coming back basically said, look, I want to be a heel, which is fine. I'm not sure though, like you said, because no matter what she wants at Mania, she was going to come out to a massive cheer. It was going to be babyface versus babyface. Now, whether you do just a face-off and plant the seed for a match at Extreme Rules or Survivor Series or whatever, maybe you could do that. But as you said, Bianca Belair is one of your shining stars that could be a huge superstar on SmackDown. You've touted, her athleticism and her story and everything like that. And then just to have her squashed in less than 20 seconds, or I think the official time was 26 seconds, you squashed her.
But I have to say, after listening to both of y'all, I think a reason why it works is because it's another way to try to ensure if Becky Lynch wants to be a heel, to kind of make that happen, because now she's kind of been co-opted by that WWE booking, so everybody disagrees with the booking, and I think they're trying to kind of help move that heat from the company over to her and see if it takes. Because if you look at it that way, I figured, well, yeah, not the most popular move, but brilliant if you're really trying to force their hand.
And I don't have an issue with that. I think it's tricky when we say, I know there's been a lot of critique of it on social media, when we say let these things play out. We'll see. I wish if that were the case, we saw something in the ring, whether it was a low blow or, I don't know, a cheap shot, or there was no story. The story was a squash.
Yeah.
Can they do something with it? I'm with you. Maybe. But, man, for that moment, for them not to know there'd be a serious thud. Again, Stu made a good point about not wanting to do anything to hurt a future star in Bianca Belair, who's full of charisma. I would never want to do anything to, even if she turns heel, let her have her moment. Let Becky Lynch come back with some flair and some pomp and circumstance. To me, that makes the turn even more special. I don't know. Or maybe a match where she couldn't, and believe me, I don't write this stuff, but maybe a match where she couldn't win because Bianca's better and Becky's been away, and then she needed to cheat. And all of a sudden, well, Becky's back, but it's a different Becky. I don't know. What we saw, I thought, left a lot to be desired. And again, they've just got such a problem with short-sighted booking where they kind of use all their cards in 1 week, and 2 weeks later it's like, what do we do? And that's the Monday Night Raw issue. So I don't know. I guess knowing what we know, it's hard not to be discouraged. But again, they built Bianca into this star. Man, why would you wouldn't treat Roman that way? I don't know why they would treat Bianca that way.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, the thing is that they have. And he finally just got so good that he's able to surpass all that. And that's what's going to happen. That's just how they do it. I'm not agreeing with it, but...
Sure. But when did Roman lose in a 30-second squash match?
Yeah, that's the thing.
I know that's apples to oranges, and I'm not... But I know what you mean. He lost to Finn on Raw.
And I'll be honest, I had a problem with Brock squashing Kofi. I know it was heel versus babyface, but... You know, the positive vibe you got out of putting the title on Kofi, and then you squash it along with him in 7 seconds on the first SmackDown on Fox. It's a little different, but at the same time, it does feel a little bit similar. So
I go to my grave saying this, and I sincerely hope that at my grave people aren't asking me this question, but I'll go to my grave saying I have less of an issue with Kofi dropping the belt. To sort of tie on Justin's point about what comes next, my biggest issue was I was so excited the next Friday and the next Friday, and then after a while I'm like, oh, this isn't happening. I was so excited to hear Kofi's promo about losing the belt. He was champ for almost 6 months. It took him 11 years to get there. He had this run as champion, what it meant to him. Hey, was he going after Brock Lesnar? Maybe somebody interrupted him, and then that was his next program, and eventually we'd get back to the title picture down the road. Yeah. But the fact that never happened, that to me was the worst part. So maybe they will make the Becky thing work, but the worst thing, because to me, all three of us, anybody listening or watching, like you commit, like I committed to Kofi Kingston as my WWE champion. I watched, I was invested in the stories. I liked his work. I'm biased. I happen to like covering Kofi too. So of course but of course you have your favorites when you're watching people on television and doing what they do week to week. And I was so invested in the Kofi run. Kofi Mania, maybe top 3 Mania moment of all time. It was that good, that special. And then for him never to cut a promo after losing that belt, like that still boggles my mind, mystifies me that you could give the guy the make him your guy for 6 months. Then he loses the belt and you expect us just to move on. So I really hope, I hope Justin's right. I hope that they make something special out of what we saw at Mania, because the pieces are all there, right? People are red hot. There's emotion. Whether you agree with it or disagree with it, you have an opinion, which is great. It's great to disagree because we all have a passionate opinion. Yeah. So I really hope they make the most of it. Like, to me, Kofi losing the belt could have been turned around had you put the mic in his hand that next week. He never, and I'm still waiting for that promo. Yeah. Unfortunately.
Absolutely. Let's switch gears real quick. Well, before we switch to NXT TakeOver, give me your favorite, one of your favorite moments from WrestleMania, from SummerSlam that we didn't talk about.
I never thought we'd see it again, and that's not the only reason why I loved it, because the match was outstanding. Edge and Seth Rollins. I think we know how good Seth Rollins is. I'm not quite sure how Edge, after being gone so long, is this good. Everything he's done has been, and I know it didn't work the first Orton match at the Indoor Mania, the Performance Center Mania. They worked out like a match that would have had fans. I still like that match. I was in the minority probably of fans that like that match. I've liked everything Adam Copeland's done since he came back. I'm not sure he's done anything better than he has what we saw at SummerSlam with that iconic entrance. The match was great. Everything. I thought the Edge thing, it took me back. I mean, I was watching Edge wrestle as a teenager. Here he is. He still looks great. And again, just one of those guys I'd put away in my mind that we'd never see him do this again. And that's it. The career was over. Edge was not coming back. And now he's back and he looks great, rewriting the final chapter of his career. I thought that was, I'd be curious to hear your opinions. I thought that was really special.
Well, Justin, actually, I had another question for you, but no, I'm going to say, of course, I popped for the old school Brood entrance, but I have to ask you this. Are you impressed with what Pat McAfee has been able to bring to the commentary table and how it's kind of also rejuvenated Michael Cole? Because that story, it just really stuck with me even today. It's like, oh, they said he had to go to a dark place and they were able to tie in everything to where it made sense. And that happens so rarely on WWE television nowadays.
Justin, when Morrow left, and I like Morrow a lot. I think he's one of the best ever to do what he does. When Morrow left, to me, it's like a blindfold test. If you were, kind of like with fast food almost, right? If you and I were blindfolded, could we tell the difference between McDonald's and Wendy's and Burger King? And I'd like to think we could. I don't know. It'd be fun to try, right? To me, that's very similar with and I'm not knocking it because it works for them. It's the same thing with their referees. Like WWE's referees all kind of have a similar approach on the main roster. So does the broadcast team, and that it works for them, right? It's very different than I think what we grew up with even JR, who was very distinct, or if you go back, Gorilla, or from the WWE eras, their lead broadcasters. Even Vince was different than the others. So to hear Pat come in and be so different and so fun, I think it's been, and then it's crazy too, Justin, everything Pat's done. So like, all right, you think he'd be okay at broadcasting? He's been great. You think he'd be okay in the ring? He's doing moonsaults and going toe-to-toe with the Undisputed Era. The whole Pat run is one of the most peculiar runs, and Stu's a historian, I'd be curious his take. It's one of the most peculiar runs ever in wrestling history. To do what he's done as a manager, wrestler, broadcaster in a short amount of time with tons of respect, not coming in and being like, what's wrestling and learning about it. Like, clearly he respects his stuff. He's got a passion for it. The Pat McAfee run in WWE, NXT included, is extremely unique. I'm not quite sure we've ever seen anything like it.
I agree. It's, he just has, he has done so well from the rivalry with Adam Cole on NXT to, managing, and now to commentary. I mean, if we can get I want a segment every SmackDown of him and Boogs and Nakamura. Just give me that, and I'll be happy, because that's like 100% pure joy being injected into your eyes. It's just wonderful. And I think, and it doesn't happen with somebody else. Pat McAfee has made it his own, put his spin on it, his personality into it, and I had my doubts, but man, he has proven me wrong, and I am so glad he did. So let's switch gears to NXT TakeOver. Arguably, we may be the last takeover of its kind for a while because of all the changes, allegedly. Walter and Ilya Dragunov. My God. I mean, I think Walter's still throwing chops at Dragunov now. That match, I mean, that was I hate to use this term, that was the most beautiful violence that we've probably seen on TV.
Ever? I mean, again, it's hard not
to,
just a match.
Yeah, maybe not ever, but it's up there.
It's up there. It's not just a match of the year for NXT. That's a match of the year for the industry. And wow, were they special. I don't know how, having covered Walter a little bit on the indies, just having an idea of his perspective, he's not enamored with the idea of uprooting his family and moving here to the United States. And that's a big commitment, right? Asking someone to, would probably be Orlando, right? Move to Orlando, move to Florida. I don't know how you get him to come to WWE full time, but wow, is he special. Dragunov, they were sensational together. There were so few big men. Like, to me, he's like the Dirk Nowitzki of pro wrestling, where he's a big guy, but he can work in the post, he can shoot outside, he can get in the air, he can work on the mat, he can work as a big guy. Walter is the total package. If you're Vince McMahon and you're interested in these NXT stars, I don't know how that conversation doesn't begin and end with Walter. That everything I love about pro wrestling was captured in that match. How hard is it to do that? And every time you thought it would be over, they had more. We should watch that match again. Hopefully not for a while, because the sooner we see it, even last time was October. They went from October to August. That's a pretty good stretch, but man, was that special. And I feel like what a great opportunity now for NXT UK. Kaylee Ray came out, and that was referenced that she was an NXT champion, and now the Walter match. And man, was that special. And what a tough match to follow. But I thought I would walk away from TakeOver most enamored with Cameron Grimes because I love his story. I like that match, but it was impossible not to be thinking about what we saw with Walter.
Yeah, that was just nuts. It was, but yeah, beautiful violence and at its finest.
But if you're Vince, you gotta pull up the dump truck full of money to wherever he is located to get him to move his family, because that guy should be feuding against like Bobby Lashley, and that would be an impressive challenger for him. Like right,
Justin, what are you waiting for? If you saw that match, what could they possibly not? If they have second thoughts or doubts, I don't know what to say. I'm with you. He is, and it would be fun to see him not portrayed as an evil foreigner. I think we've seen that enough. I don't think he can just be Walter. He's incredible. I agree. If he came out with the last and challenged Bobby Lashley, I think you'd have more people watching Monday Night Raw.
Yeah, I agree. But I think you're right. I think, there is the whole, he's been saying it for a long time. He does not want to leave the UK, does not want to leave Europe. He does not want to move to the United States. And it's kind of like, some others where it's like, how much can Vince, change his mind? We'll see.
Maybe he moves to Canada.
Or even look at it as, I know that's seen as a legend, but think of it like a territory run where, I mean, if they brought him up in, let's just say October to the main roster and you work a program or a couple programs through Mania.
Yeah.
Like, that'd be great. Yeah. You'd have and then if he left and went back to NXT UK, you would have a lot more NXT UK fans by the end of that than you started with.
Yeah, I think you're
Very
right.
True.
I think you're right. The other big match, Samoa Joe won the title from Karrion Kross. You had Raquel Gonzalez keep her title. Cameron Grimes, as you mentioned, winning the $1 Million Championship. And then Adam Cole, Kyle O'Reilly, the undisputed finale. Give me your thoughts on that match, first of all.
I liked it. I was curious. I figured O'Reilly would win. I just didn't see how they do it once he got handcuffed. That was the submission finish was great. Liking both those guys and what they've sacrificed and built and how they've delivered. And was it the right time to break up the Undisputed Era? I don't know. Probably, given wrestling history. The New Day's proven otherwise, but really the trajectory is you build till you can't grow anymore, then you break, and then you go. I'm curious, again, where they go next with Kyle. I would put him in the world title picture. I think Samoa Joe's there, obviously, to prove a point, A, that he still got it, which we know, and B, to put over the next guy and the guy after that and the guy after that. So I think Kyle O'Reilly could use that Samoa Joe rub. I'll be very surprised if we see Adam Cole again. To me, that felt like one of those. I remember watching Monday Night. Obviously, it wasn't a loser leaves town, but I remember watching Monday Night Raw as a kid and being deflated. That Mr. Perfect, which is a great match, but Mr. Perfect Ric Flair match, and I remember thinking, I was so sad that Flair was leaving because I loved watching Monday Night Raw. Or it was In Your House. I think it was Savio Vega, Stone Cold, or the Ringmaster, and DiBiase said, "If we can't beat you, I'm leaving." And I loved watching. I mean, I'm not sure I've had throughout the years, someone I've enjoyed more than the $1 Million Man in different iterations, whether it was a wrestler or a manager or a broadcaster or whatever he was doing. I always enjoyed watching Ted DiBiase. So him obviously saying he was a loser leaves town, he's gone. So it felt that way to me that Cole was gone. And I think if he is, what a fantastic signing for AEW if they can get him, acquisition. I just think the way WWE is going with guys of a certain size, Cole doesn't fit that image or doesn't fit that model, which I think is insane because we saw it with Daniel Bryan. One size doesn't fit all. And again, it reminds me so much of history repeating itself. Vince McMahon was so smart to take this Hollywood star in Terry Bollea and this phenomenon and Hulk Hogan and Hulkamania and do something with him the AWA wasn't ready to do and make him their wrestling champion. And that kind of changed, right? Like it's not to say big guys. I know Stu's a big Lance Archer fan, so am I. Mm-hmm. Lance Archer's great, but it's not a big guys world, just big guys anymore in the main event.
Well, it's
you
not
can
a
have
prerequisite.
All different kinds of guys. So I wish they saw that with Adam Cole. It doesn't seem like that's going to happen on the main roster.
So you think Adam's heading to AEW to join his girl Britt? By the way, did you like him putting the lockjaw on Kyle O'Reilly during the match?
I did.
That was pretty nice. We know that he is done with NXT, and depending on which report you read, either he is officially a free agent or he'll be a free agent at the end of the week, whatever. So, whether it's main roster, and I'm kind of leaning with you, not just because of the way the main roster is going, but also there are things like he has said that he is not going to give up his Twitch channel. Well, that could be a problem because Vince has said no third party outlets there for the wrestlers, and so Adam's either going to have to give up the Twitch channel, or he's going to have to give up WWE. So I tend to lean towards him going to AEW. I guess I wouldn't be completely shocked if we see him show up on Raw or SmackDown. By the way, I wanted to ask you this, and we'll wrap up with this. SummerSlam, like I said, it was a great show, but it did seem like all the newsworthy items, all the big items happened on the SmackDown side with Becky and Brock and everything, and you didn't have that much newsworthy stuff outside of Bobby beating Goldberg and beating up his son. You didn't have a whole lot coming out of the Raw side. Any word as to maybe USA Network maybe going, hey, why is everything happening on Fox?
If they're not, they should be. Yeah, you had Charlotte win the women's title, which is a nice moment, or the Raw title, which is a nice moment and a really good match. And she's, if not the best in the world, one of. She is just so good. Maybe the idea was you're going to get more Goldberg, but I just don't know if that long-term, that story can last into October.
It better
I'm not sure. The crowd reaction was telling when Lashley got Gage and the Goldberg's son in the full Lashley, full Nelson, and the crowd exploded, right? They were ready to cheer. So I don't know. I didn't like the finish. Have Lashley pin Goldberg. Do we need a referee stoppage? Bobby deserves that win. Mm-hmm. I didn't like the way that ended. Yeah, I agree. The Raw. It's funny. I was talking about this earlier today. To me, and I'm not saying we can do this, but I think there's a formula to it, and you need long-term stories, and you need to dedicate yourself to those stories. Monday Night Raw, what's the story that's working? RK Bro, why? They've developed the characters. We know Randy Orton. They've given Matt Riddle time to introduce himself and get his character over. And there's a plan there. I mean, I think we're pretty confident here on August 24th that we're going to see that match at WrestleMania, Orton versus Riddle. They've got a clear direction. I don't know how many other stars in the Raw brand can say, I'm doing this at WrestleMania right now. And that's a problem. It doesn't mean it's going to happen, but it just seems like Raw is week-to-week booking. Let's figure it out. Let's see if we can do something better. Let's change. Let's this, that's that. You need a plan. And I think that with Orton and Riddle, we see that, and it's working so well. Granted, they're working with some talented people too, especially AJ. But, man, that story is so damn good. They've got a plan. But this stuff shouldn't be that complicated. Create a plan, stick with it, see how it goes, tweak it when you need it. But Orton, he's a star. He should know who he's working at Mania. I don't know if Charlotte knows who she's working at Mania. It's changing so often. So that's a problem. And I think that's one of Raw's bigger issues, too.
Not to mention, we don't even know who's going to be on the roster coming to WrestleMania. But that's going to be another subject for another day.
We do know one thing, is that Karrion Kross is going to show up looking like an extra from Fury Road.
What do you think of Karrion Kross's look? Because, I'm going to go with the clean version and say he looked like the lost member of Demolition. I could go really, really dirty and say he and Scarlett are getting bored in the bedroom.
And I love Demolition. I think they're one of the greatest of all time. Different era. I felt bad watching it. I didn't want to mock it. I didn't want to joke about it. There's a guy under that mask and under that gear, and presentation just so. I remember, I feel like every question you guys ask me, I trail off into a different answer. But I remember covering an indie show pre-pandemic, and maybe a couple of years before, and Hacksaw was there, and Hacksaw was working the crowd, and I don't remember who he wrestled, but he was in the ring, and he had such presence. Karrion Kross, with that character in NXT, had a phenomenal, fantastic presence. He had meaning. He had purpose. It felt like all of that was ripped away from him last night on Raw, or Monday on Raw, for a guy that was so close to having it, right, having something special go his way. And it's hard. It's hard to be great at anything. And for Kevin to be so close, all the work he did in NXT, it seems like it's just going to be evaporated very quickly. All that goodwill, all that equity, all that aura. Like, I think it's Shayna Baszler, who Shayna should be much bigger than she is. That's presentation, the way they're using her. It's not Shayna. She's still a badass. Shayna's not someone you'd want to get into a fight with. Karrion Kross is still got the goods, but in terms of the way they're presenting him, I didn't like it. I hope I'm wrong, but it just seems like it's destined to not succeed.
Yeah, I mean, look, I like Karrion Kross too. I think his presence on NXT was fantastic, and he has been stripped of everything about that character coming up to Raw, and he's become, generic big guy Mick Carter. And I hate to see that, because I think Karrion's a great talent, but yeah.
And how much of that too, you wonder, is that's another thing too. It's so interesting, the dynamic here, that it's father-in-law and son-in-law, and one is doing his job, at least in character development, significantly better than the other.
Yeah.
Like Triple H is making these guys, he made Karrion Kross bigger and better, helped make him bigger and better than he ever was before. Absolutely. In one night, that was ripped away from him on Raw by Vince. It's remarkable. And I'm not saying it's just Vince, because he's got a team around him too, and as does Triple H in NXT. But they're the guys at the front of the line. Yeah, I genuinely felt bad knowing a little bit about Kevin. I think he's always been a class act when I've covered him. I covered him before WWE, and I was so impressed by the work ethic and what he did in the ring. And I didn't like it.
Yeah, I'm with you. He is Justin Barrasso. Read all of his stuff, Sports Illustrated, SI.com. Follow him on Twitter at Justin Barrasso. Justin, as always, thanks so much for all the content. We appreciate everything. And one of these, are you coming to the New Japan show in Dallas?
Probably not Dallas. If I go to New Japan, it'll probably be Philly.
Okay.
I suppose I could be talked into, persuaded, but more than likely Philly is that October?
I think it's October. I know the Dallas one is into September. I'm going to that. So we'll cross paths one of these days. We'll have to sit down and have a bite and tell tall tales.
Stu, before we break,
yes,
just you mentioned the Texas show, Lance Archer. I'd be remiss if I didn't say, boy, did he look like a star at that Resurgence show against Tanahashi. Carried the match, dictated the pace. As a heel, like, he did his job, right? But I thought he did it in a very convincing manner. His work made the Tanahashi comeback so special. Man, was I impressed by Lance Archer that night.
He has gotten so good. I mean, we've seen him for a long time, and to see what he is now as opposed to when we first saw him on the Indies back in 2016, it's night and day, and I'm so thrilled for Lance. So thanks a lot, Justin. All the best to you, and we'll talk again soon.
Gentlemen, thank you both.
All right, man, that was great. I appreciate it, man. Sorry we took so long, but man, it was good. I didn't want to stop. So I appreciate everything. As I said, this will go up on podcast tomorrow, and it'll air tomorrow night on the radio station.
Send me the link, and I'll put it in the column tomorrow. Yeah, it's funny. Once we get rolling, talking to you, it's like talking to an old friend at Thanksgiving. Justin's wonderful. Talking to him is like talking to an old friend. It's fun connecting with you guys. So anytime.
I think Justin has a question.
So
yeah.
Hey man, I didn't want to put anybody on the spot like during the live show, but I did have to ask, like, because I like you said, there's people underneath these gimmicks and stuff, but like, how much of this situation from Karrion Kross seems eerily similar? Like, I think they kind of tried to nip it in the bud before it became a Sable Mark Marrow thing, and it kind of makes me
Scarlett.
Yeah, and it kind of makes me feel that Scarlett might have been the bigger star of the two. And that's what it turned out to be.
Fascinating.
Am I crazy for thinking that?
Why? But I don't know why you wouldn't bring them both together.
Yeah, I mean, like they could have done a story of similar stature to it, but I think you know how Vince has always been like, they rather just have one star than like a tag team or anything like that. I'm thinking that they might see her as the main, like, you know, she was the A side of the tag team in this case.
Their
even though he was the
of
champion.
NXT talent, it's almost like making a point that what you're doing isn't working and what we do will. And I've heard, I don't know, is it Bruce Pritchard against Paul Levesque? I don't know, but it seems like from the outside, it seems like a mess. Cross went from even just the fact that they screwed up the Cross booking.
Yeah.
He was supposed to stay undefeated through TakeOver, lose to Samoa Joe, go to Raw. All right, that works. And they screwed with it. Which shows you what they think of NXT. It's a developmental brand, even though we were told for so long it wasn't. That stinks, though, that they can't let these stories play out in that world, because the way you're rushing them up to Raw, like, what was it? It was, and I don't think Scarlett was part of that either, but Cross and Keith Lee. Yes. No, Cross worked the main event match. I'm sorry, but Karrion Kross shouldn't be, and this is not a knock to people who work main event, shouldn't be working main event matches before he debuts on Raw. You're taking away all the mystery, all the aura. It's mind-boggling. I'll be curious what they do with Scarlett, and maybe they'll be better with her, but they work well together. It's amazing they would tinker with something that works.
Yeah. We've been saying the same thing about Keith Lee, and we've known Keith Lee very well here, because both of us have worked, we've called matches and worked with him quite a bit here in Texas. So I don't get it. You just shrug your shoulders. So, all right, man, I'll let you go.
Yeah, thank you again.
Again, thanks a lot. And I'll tag you and we'll talk again soon. Okay.
Pleasure, guys. Thanks so much.
All right. Bye-bye.
Good night.
Justin Barrasso, so good. Knows he's got his finger on the pulse. So a lot of good stuff there. We're going to take a quick time out. When we come back, we'll let you know what's happening in independent wrestling around the area. You're listening to Sports Guys Talking Wrestling on the Horn. Forgot to do the outro on that segment.
I thought you did that on purpose.
No, I do that. I forgot to do the outro. So I'm gonna carve that. Was
I was like, how much do you have to trim off of it now?
A bunch. We went 50 minutes. Just with Justin.
Really?
Yes. So no worries. It was good stuff. I know approximately where I want to trim. And we didn't get to a lot of stuff. So I tell you what, we're just going to do not even podcast only. We're going to just talk stream only, because we didn't talk a whole lot about Raw. We mentioned Karrion Kross, and I don't blame Kross on this. This is not Kross. This is, whether it's Bruce Pritchard, John Laurinaitis.
But it always seems like a test from WWE. It's like, here, we're gonna hand you
them,
because you gotta know what you got. It's like, here, we know you're talented at this,
so
but we're going to have to see if you can do this. And if you can make this work, then maybe we'll think about using you. You know how it is, like when you get like a new boss and they're just kind of like, oh, I know you've been, great at your job for 20 years, even though you've been working at the same building. But guess what? I'm in charge now, and I got to see what you got.
And as I said, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Let's see what else. Miz and Morrison split.
I know
they've been baiting that for a little while. They finally pulled the trigger last night. It was, the segment itself was a bit convoluted, because I guess they figured they get cheers for Logan Paul, and he was pretty much booed out of the building.
Yeah.
And by the time Miz came out and Miz, started talking smack about Logan Paul, he ended up getting cheered.
Oh yeah.
So it was just a it went all sorts of different directions. So, but we're going to see Miz and Morrison fight probably next week.
But I'm okay with that though, because it finishes the storyline.
It does. Thank God.
And we talked about the incoherent booking from WWE, especially on the Raw side. So at least this is a storyline that went full circle.
And that's what I was talking about earlier before we even went on, about how it felt like Raw last night felt like they there weren't there was one match that we could call a rematch. There might, I mean, you could kind of see Damian Priest and Bobby Lashley, and then Sheamus comes in. It kind of turned a little into, but it wasn't really a rematch. But for the most part, they started new stories, which I was like, wow, this is refreshing. This is what we usually expect coming out of WrestleMania. But it seems like they had been stuck since WrestleMania and they hadn't done anything new. I have to believe NBC Universal has got to be screaming because you've made all these big splashes for SmackDown, which is on Fox, and you really hadn't done squat on Raw.
No,
I mean that's kind of like, it's kind of like, okay, hey, what about us? We're your partners with Raw. We're also your partners with NXT. We're also your partners with Peacock, and yet you're doing all the big splashy stuff for Fox. I'm just saying, just seemed a little weird.
I just don't know how much that is like on purpose, just because SmackDown just has been the stronger show right now. They have separate writers. They have separate writers. So it's just one of those things where it's just like, hey, they just been on. Their talent's been really good.
And I'm with Justin Brasso. All of it pales in comparison to CM Punk. I think now, we are going to have to see what happens. He's got his first Dynamite appearance tomorrow night in, I think it's Milwaukee. They've got him booked for All Out against Darby Allin. So I want to see how that goes and how that flows. But right now, I'm definitely intrigued. And I'll be honest, I like CM Punk. I've never been like a big fan of his, but I'm a fan. But I'm kind of excited to see what happens with everything.
Like Summer Punk was probably one of the best things that ever happened during the WWE. During that era.
Yeah.
But I can understand that. I'm not like a huge CM Punk mark. There's some people that absolutely love everything with the Nexus and everything he ever did, all the ROH stuff. And I respect all his work. I just wasn't like the biggest of fans.
Yeah.
But I mean, I enjoy his work. And that's why I was kind of like, well, and this is what I talked about with Adam and with Sam on their show, was just like, hey, what does CM Punk do for you? And he's just like, well, not really anything, because he's like, I don't really know CM Punk. And he's like, I know that he tried to fight in UFC. He's like, I know he does comic book stuff, and he likes, the Marvel Cinematic Universe and things like that. But he's like, but for me, he's like, for a guy that doesn't really watch pro wrestling, this is coming from Adam. He was just kind of like, oh, well, I'm not inclined. Now he's like, well, Brock Lesnar, John Cena, just because I have more familiarity with those guys, I might
bigger platform.
Yeah, I might be more inclined to kind of tune in to see what those guys are doing. And Sam brought up a good point because he doesn't really watch sports, but he was like, he's like, I don't know about the CM Punk thing, but he's like, definitely all these moves are just basically built to just bring in that middle of the road fan that's kind of been away for a little while.
Yeah.
And try to get him back into it and see like, hey, check out the other stuff we've done while you've been gone the last 7 years.
Right. Well, and especially with CM Punk.
But CM
and then
Punk,
you see, and then if you believe the rumor and innuendo, he's not the only big return that's going to happen, because we may be seeing Bryan Danielson coming to AEW. Keep a good eye out on the Arthur Ashe Stadium show in September. Now there's talk Bray Wyatt may be going to AEW.
Well, he did have that new mask on social media. Did you see it?
I saw that. Mask? Yeah, I saw that. If he does go to AEW, I hope he doesn't do the supernatural stuff, and I got a feeling he won't, because Tony Khan himself has said he wasn't a fan of the teleportation stuff with Matt Hardy, so I don't think they'll do the supernatural stuff. I hope it'll kind of be the, forgive the comparison, the Wyatt family, the cult leader, Bray Wyatt. I'm hoping we'll see something like that. I don't want him anywhere near the Dark Order. If anything, I want him on his own, maybe with his own faction. I don't, but don't just repeat the Fiend character.
No, I want it because I think he's not done with it. Like, it was going to go into another direction. He didn't get to finish telling the story. It's kind of like Aleister Black. I think you need to give him that chance. Or I'm sorry,
well,
what's his
Aleister
name
Black
now? Malachi Black.
Well, but see, that's different. That's apples and oranges. There is no supernatural stuff. Malachi Black, and I got this from Malachi Black. That is a continuation of the Aleister Black character.
Yeah.
Except he's possessed.
Yeah.
But we didn't see the possession.
I think possession is kind of supernatural stuff.
But I don't. But that's the thing. I don't want to see black goo coming down people's faces, or I don't want to see a match in red light. I don't want to see the stuff he did as the Fiend in WWE. I don't want to see that. I want to see. Give me creepy. Give me, maybe he and Abaddon team up. I don't know.
Well, I was gonna say you might see what I think you would see reminiscence of what you saw in WWE, but it'd probably be more fleshed out in the way that he originally intends it to be. I'm sure that somebody had like their say on how this would be more entertaining, and his stuff was probably way darker, and I think that's why the Fiend character would fit on AEW, because it will allow him to go in that darker direction. Because
darker, yes, just without the supernatural stuff.
I think that's kind of the appeal, though.
No, because Tony Khan's already said he doesn't want the supernatural stuff. He didn't want it. He regrets letting Matt Hardy doing the teleportation.
So is Sting still supernatural?
No,
because
Sting's never been supernatural.
Well, because he would not sell the baseball bat hits in WCW, and sometimes
that's not supernatural. That's just you explain that away with adrenaline or something. Sting got put through a table and he popped up.
Yeah.
That's not supernatural. That's just being amped up. I'm talking about, again, the black goo, the mystical, have the realms and that crap. No, that doesn't belong in AEW.
Wait.
Because then it looks too much like WWE. And you don't want that. You don't want it to look like WWE Light. TNA taught us that years ago.
Yeah.
So,
I suppose.
And we may see more people. Who knows? We may see Adam Cole debut in AEW. So there's a lot of stuff. It was so funny too. Sunday night during Takeover, you know how the Young Bucks have been changing their bio on Twitter? Mm-hmm. The bio was the link to a YouTube video about seances, which I was like, okay, sure. We're gonna bring Adam Cole back to life on BTE.
Oh, that's right.
So, by the way, and I meant to ask Justin this: do you watch BTE or Sammy Guevara's blog?
No, I just follow Sammy on Instagram. Congratulations, Sammy, on getting married. I heard the engagement. She said yes.
Wonderful.
So
wonderful. So happy for Sammy. I'll be honest. I've always been a fan of BTE. I also watch Sammy's vlog. I used to think BTE was the better one. Now it's just me personally. Sammy's vlog is much better because and maybe it's just because it's more fun. There's more hijinks. It's not 20 minutes of Kenny and the Bucks showing off their Jordans.
Well, yeah, I mean, different strokes for different
I know.
folks,
it may be different for people. I'm weird and different like that.
But the one thing that comes out of all these moves, though, is like, all right, don't shoot the messenger here. I'm just one of those guys that analyze this thing. I know. But the complaint for all new companies has always been like, oh, okay, you're getting too many WWE cast-offs, too many WWE guys. And then in this case, like, don't get me wrong, these are all, A+ guys to have on a roster. My question is, though, is like, what happens to the guys that have been carrying the company, throughout the beginning here, like most of the Dark Order, some of those guys that have been in the mid card that came over in that first wave, and stars like Sammy Guevara and MJF. It's like, because it's like, as good as those guys are, because they're very talented in their own right, you gotta strike while the iron's hot, and you can't just shuffle in Daniel Bryan Danielson into like the opener. This guy's a grand stature. He has to be competing for a major title as soon as he gets there.
Then again, John Moxley's been on Dark. He's been on Dark Elevation. Even.
Yeah, but John Moxley's already been there, and he's already been champion. So he's already done his part. But now you have these new guys coming in, and it's like you're trying to build those new stars like Ricky Starks, like a Brandon Cutler.
Well,
I understand.
If you listen to Punk, well, you may have during his media scrum, he talks about he wants to work with the new talent. He wants to build them up, and I mean, right now he's slated to face Darby Allin. So I was just talking. Let's put it this way: maybe I'm biased.
Like if they signed Adam Cole, Danielson, and Bray Wyatt, like those guys all show up for sure. You can't say no to them.
No, of course you won't say no to them, but you also will find a way to balance it with the Sammy Guevara's, and MJF is a huge star in his own right. I'll be honest, I'm not too worried about, or at least I have a little more faith. I have lost faith with WWE. That comes from years of seeing them misuse new talent and so on and so forth. For example, I give you Keith Lee. I don't necessarily have a loss of faith in AEW. Now, it hadn't been long enough yet. I'll give you that. But I'm more willing to do a wait and see on them than I am with WWE.
It's just because
WWE has its tropes that they stick to no matter what.
Oh, definitely, and that's what's made them successful over the years.
It's also why a lot of guys get lost in the shuffle.
But but I mean that's kind of like
when I mean you're not going to hot shot all three of those guys. I mean you still got to do the Hangman Page thing. That's still kind of going to happen. I mean, right now he's taking time off because he had a kid.
I know, but timing's everything. And I know it's like, it's a new day and age. You're supposed to get that leeway. It's not the 80s anymore where you have to be on the road 110% of the time and you can't have family stuff. But at the same token, it's a business. And I think the crowd is going to be the ones that ultimately get to decide. Does Page get that title shot as soon as he comes back? Or does it go to one of the new arriving stars for a dream match that they have probably been just salivating over the possibilities of having an Omega versus Danielson while you still get a piece of his prime still left? Like you have a very short window to get that match out of Bryan Danielson.
Yeah, sure. I agree. I mean, and you can still do that match and still save the title change for Page. You can still do all that. I mean, that's again. There are ways they can do it. I don't know how. But I have faith that Tony and Cody and the creative team will find a way.
No, definitely they've been good so far. I'm just saying, like it's getting really close to the point where they're going to have a similar issue to how WWE was in the sense of
bloated roster.
Yeah,
I've been talking about that for a while, and I agree.
And they're going to have to figure out a way to balance it out. Like which show's going to be what show, and who's going to show up where.
Well, they're not doing there is no brand split. There's not going to be a brand split. Like you're not going to have a Dynamite roster and a Rampage roster.
No, there's not going to be a brand split, but there was definitely a Nitro Thunder feel to it.
But you're not going to have separate rosters.
No, but I mean, you didn't have separate rosters on Monday Nitro or on WCW Thunder.
Okay, so I'm trying to figure out where are you getting at with, and it's getting close to where it's getting time to wrap up.
Well, they just did like WCW wasn't really able to sustain both shows equally. Like not both shows were not great.
Well, yeah, but that wasn't their only problem.
But they had a bloated roster.
They also had a horrible booking, and they had. And they had a lot of guys in business for themselves, and they had a lot of problems. Having to book 5 hours of TV was only one of their problems. There was a bunch of stuff wrong with WCW, and I say that having been a WCW fan.
Well, yeah, I think everybody was a WCW fan.
Right now, you got 3 hours on TV plus Dark and Elevation. So
that's what, 5
I'm
hours,
not.
6
Yeah.
hours?
Yeah, so I'm not worried about
No, I don't want anybody to fail.
There are, and there's going to be talents that are they're going to leave the roster because it's coming up on. Let's see, we're
2-3 years now in.
We're at 2.5 years since the company came into existence. It will be 2 years in October since they've been on TV with Dynamite. So I suspect we will have some talents that have contracts that end, and maybe they decide to go somewhere else, whether it's Ring of Honor, or Impact, or NWA or MLW.
Oh, well, at least there's a place to try to catch on. But,
and
you won't have the national audience that you have, with AEW.
Right. That's true. But, hey, we've had that problem for the last 20 where, it was WWE or nothing.
That's
so,
true.
That's the thing. So, I think we covered everything. So, I think it's time to edit. So, thanks everybody for joining us. Hope you enjoyed that conversation with Justin Barrasso. We'll be back next week. I got high school football this week.
Oh, yeah?
Lake Travis and Arlington Martin at Lake Travis at Cavalier Stadium.
Nice.
And I think we're kicking off at 7.
That sounds about right.
Because I think this week for some reason. So we're bringing back the network on the Horn and Bat and AM. So, and I think. Well, I have to look. I know one of it. Vandergrift kicks off at like 6:30.
Yeah.
And then I think Lake Travis and Bowie kick off at 7.
I would hate to try to get there on time.
So Flex ATX is going to start at like 6 with Snoop, and then go through the games, and then we'll have Flex ATX after the game. But yeah, Lake Travis, Arlington Martin, 7 o'clock kick at Cavalier Stadium. Hear it on the Horn on 104.9 with Mark, Bucky, and me. I get to see Jacob Henry, Mark's son.
Oh, yeah? He's varsity nice.
Yes, defensive line on top of all the other additions. So, all right, folks, thanks for joining us. As I said, we'll be back next week with a new stream.